fatal heart impacts, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and pass. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet out. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirito here, and now, whenever we last left off with this series, we had Izuku Midoriya. Now, in the last part, something strange happened. Deku suddenly went to the future. The future Vengola Decimo used a piece of the 10-year bazooka's ammo, transporting Deku 10 years into the future, where he talked to Bakugo, his supposed right-hand man. Now, this Bakugo has been through many things, experienced many battles, and has been with the Mafia for over 10 years. And he informed Deku of a few things. He knows that he's breaking quite a bit of rules saying what he said. However, if everything does go good and well, a lot of their friends will still be alive. Now, this did surprise Deku, since he was basically dealing with what he just learned, and then was thrown into a situation where, yeah, if Deku breaks or buckles right now, many people will die. Friends, more family, a lot of things can happen. Deku will fight for what he still does have. And Deku went back to the hospital, apologized to Nine and Reborn, and then told his family about what's happening. Their families are going to be moved, and his power was released by Vengola 9, undoing the seal to it to where Deku can now use his power freely without the pills to rely on. Now then, with that being said, Deku and his familia, they have made a plan. They have a few hours before the villains are supposed to attack. Now, Deku's quite aware of what's going to happen. From what Bakugo did say, the villains in his timeline, whenever the heroes did gather together and start to formulate a plan, they attacked the meeting, meaning that they did a full-on assault out in broad daylight. And this was simply to divert everyone away from the heroes, and to burn through All Might's time a bit more. Now, this is quite surprising. And we do actually have a few hours later where Deku and his familia, they are all in position. Now, Deku, yeah, he knows that he'll be exposed immediately, since his power, it will be shown off. And yeah, the familia, they do decide to stand with Deku. They won't hide their faces. If it means they're going to go on the run together, and they were already going to either end up in jail or exposed, they might as well do this together. Now, Nine was quite surprised. Certain members of Deku's familia, they did seem to be bothered by this idea. However, they did want to stand with him. Now, Denki did at least express his concern, since this feels like he's getting too far in over his head. And Nine did at least give the boy some advice. Now, with that being said, the heroes are all currently in a meeting, trying to pin down what the League of Villains currently are, and understand where their students could all possibly be. Now, with that, we do actually have the League of Villains, where on a tall building, they do actually open a portal. And as the portal does open, they do step out. Now, the ones that do have the rings, they do go to use box weapons, opening them up as they do get ready for their assault on the hero's base, you could say. Now, Deku and his familia, they actually are waiting on standby. The moment Deku did actually feel his intuition tell him that the villains are on the rise now, he did inform his familia. Weapons at the ready. And he did actually go to ignite his flames on his own. The flame on his head igniting as Deku he does look down at his fist, watching as his gloves do turn into the Vengolo 10 gloves, and he does actually go to bring his hands up to light the flames. Now, he'd actually feel very impressed with himself and proud, as he is trying to get a feel for his power. Now, it was quite surprising. He doesn't really feel all that different. His flames, they do just tingle a little bit more, and that's really about it. Now then, we do have where the villains, yeah, they all do start their attack. As we do have a few people that do kind of surprise the heroes. Now, we have Toya Todoroki, who using his box weapon, he does start to break through and smash through the headquarters of the heroes, immediately alerting many of them as he does go to flambe and roast many of them. Now, the heroes do go on guard, and they do go on offense, as we actually do have Toga, who she does actually go to start using her own box weapon, and a entire swarm of mosquitoes do start to attack people, as she does also begin to start using her flame factor, or I believe it's called the mist ring. Now, this is where we actually have some members of the Familia who all for one aligned himself with early. We have Overhaul, who he is here. Now, this is all quite a shock, and many people didn't know who this guy was. And there actually is Deku. He was trying to understand. He's never seen that villain before. Now, Deku, he does actually go to bring up his hands and click onto the earpiece. As it does turn on, and Deku does go to run over and jump off of the building. Now, Deku's quite aware. In less than 1 minute, they're going to be revealed to the world. And this is not going to be good. Now, Deku's familia, they all at least do get into position, as they do run in and get ready. Now, we do cut back over to Deku, who, as he is actually starting to fall, he does go to bring down his hands. And he does go to start up his flames, as he does notice that just barely igniting them, he does start to fall slower. Now, Deku, yeah. He is directly outside of the villains, or the heroes, bases the villains are all invading. As Deku does look at many of them, and actually see them. Now, you do actually have Mr. Compress, who he does look towards Deku and explain that that's the kid who took out Muscular. Now, this is where Deku, he is looking around, as he does see somebody who does immediately anger him. Now then, this is all quite interesting. And Deku, he does stare directly at Shigaraki. As Shigaraki, as he does turn, he does see him. Now, Deku, yeah. He's pissed. Deku talking about how Shigaraki killed his friends. Shigaraki quite confused as to why this boy is here, as he does just think that that flame is similar to his mentor's. Now, Deku does go to rush in, as you do actually have Bakugo, who himself does go on the offensive. Him coming in, he does fly forwards, and he does have his gloves. Now, as Bakugo does go flying in, he does go directly for Mr. Compress, since he saw what that guy can do, and he knows that it's quite dangerous. Now, people are quite confused. These are kids and students, and they're... what? What are they doing? They're going on the offensive against villains? Their quirks all look similar. Now, this is quite a surprise, as you do actually have Kirishima, who he himself does rush into the building and start to blast away the villains. As Kirishima did blast at Toga, you do actually have another villain who's here a little bit early, you have Gentle Criminal, who he does actually go to bring up his hands and using his quirk create a barrier of air, as he does prevent the blast from directly smashing into Toga. Now, the barrier would break immediately. However, a lot of the flames, they all did at least go around the barrier. And Kirishima was quite confused. What type of flame is that? Now, this is where Kirishima, he does actually look around, and the rest of the family, they all start to head in. Now, you do actually have the heroes, who they did actually try to start taking down many of the massive amounts of villains who are still here. Mr. Compressor started taking down, at least popping, heroes out of the air. And Overhaul, yeah, that wasn't really too good. Now, this is where All Might, he does go in against the villains. However, he does dodge out of the way of Overhaul's hand attack, as he did see the ground start turning to spikes coming his direction. Now, there even was Mr. Compress, who did seem like he would be a very bad opponent for him to go up against as well. And then there was the appearance of All for One, where half of the building basically got blown apart. And he did just start floating there in the air. Now, All Might was quite confused and quite surprised, as we do actually cut back over to Deku, who he does feel the building shake. And he does assume that that was All Might. Now, Deku does go back to looking towards Shigaraki, as Shigaraki is just staring at Deku. Now, Deku and Shigaraki, they are looking at each other. Shigaraki is going to bring up his hand as his ring does ignite, and he does at least smash his fist into the box weapon. Now, he does open the weapon and he just starts aiming it towards Deku. And Deku does just bring up his hands to get ready to fight. As we actually do have where, what type of animal is good for Shigaraki? Now, as Shigaraki's box weapon does actually open, Deku is going to bring up his hands as a massive amount of butterflies do actually come flying at Deku. And Deku, he was quite alarmed to see that. Butterflies? Now, it was very surprising until one of them did actually shoot past him and actually smash right through a wall. Deku turning his head, he does go to bring up his fist and go to smash one out of the air with one of his hands, as he does go on the offensive. Now, he does go to the rush, for which he does actually go to smash Shigaraki right in the gut, as he does go to bring up his hand and punch right in the face. Now, Deku, he's aware of what he does need to do, as he does go to move backwards and away from Shigaraki. Now, we actually have the other members of Deku's Familia, who they're all trying to take on multiple villains. We actually have where Todoroki, he does face off against somebody. He faces off against a man with, well, orange flames. Now, Todoroki and this guy, they do face off against one another. Todoroki using his wolf as the man, he does go to actually use his own. And it was quite surprising. Now, Todoroki and this guy's wolf, they do fight one another, as Todoroki does go to bring up his hand and go to blast ice right at him, as the guy does go to bring up his own hand and go to blast fire. Now, Todoroki did actually go to swing his sides around, as he was going to blast fire at the guy as well. Now, Todoroki, he's facing off against Stavi, and it's quite, well, interesting. Now, well, that's actually happening. We actually do have where Momo, she's facing off against Toga, and Kendo, she's actually trying to face off against Mr. Compress, since this guy's hard to face. Kirishima's trying to focus on Gentle, and, well, let's see. Denki, he actually was trying to face off against Overhaul. However, after that guy did break up the floor and mess things up a bit, he decided against that. Now, Overhaul's trying to face off against All Might and take him down, since he knows that that guy is the biggest concern right now. If he can take him down, he can also experiment with one of his prototypes. Now, he's just waiting for them to get All Might in the perfect position. then All for One can hold up his end of the deal. Now, with that being said, we do actually have Deku, as he is rushing back in towards Shigaraki, who does actually go to try and bring up his hands and attack Deku. Deku actually going to dodge and avoid one hand, as he is going to grab Shigaraki by his wrist, and snap it, as he does actually go to bring up his hand and grab him by his other hand. As Shigaraki's fingers, they're actually going to try and reach out towards Deku's face, as one of them are barely, not even a foot or an inch in front of his nose. Deku just holding that guy's hand as he does just tell him a few things. This is the hand you used to kill them, isn't it? Deku bring up his leg as he does actually go to smash Shigaraki's hand down. And Shigaraki does actually break that hand as Deku does go to bring up his fist and smash him right in the stomach again. Shigaraki actually, lunging backwards as he does fall into the ground. And Deku he actually has to step forwards as he does see Shigaraki trying to reach out for his box weapon. Now, Deku does actually go to reach down and grab the weapon, as he does hold up the box and talk about how, his flames can open this thing. What the hell, you little bastard? You know what that is? Of course I do. I am Vengola. Vengola? What does that even mean? It means that you're messing with the Mafia. Mafia? Yes. Now, I believe I should kill you. Now then, Deku actually is going to step forwards and go to bring up the box Shigaraki did have. It's quite poetic, killing him with his own box weapon, Deku igniting his ring. As we actually have where Aizawa does actually rush in and go to wrap Deku up with his scarf. Now, Deku he does feel the scarf wrap up around one of his arms, as he does turn his head and look towards Aizawa. Kid, you need to stop what you're doing right now. Why are you even here? Mr. Aizawa, you have no idea what's going on, do you? I'm kind of confused, because it looks like these people are all using your quirk, but a different color. And then there's the fact that half my students are here. Do you mind explaining that to me? Well, no hiding it anymore, Deku does say, as he does go to look down to see Shigaraki trying to reach out for Deku's foot. Deku bringing his foot up as he's going to smash down on Shigaraki's broken hand. And he does go to bring his foot up as he does smash on it once again. You see, Mr. Aizawa, I've been in Class 1A because of a few little things. I wanted to learn how to increase my own power. However, there's a little bit of a problem. What is that? Aizawa actually activating his eyes. Deku, turning towards him, does actually go to bring up his right hand and tell him that he's quirkless, before blasting at least soft flames that direction. Burning through Aizawa's captured scarf as Deku does actually go to bring up his left hand and bring it behind him. He needs to incapacitate Aizawa. This guy can be a problem for everyone else. Him rushing forwards as Aizawa does actually go to try and dodge and use more of his scarf. Deku actually going to dodge out of the way as the scarf did actually go to try and wrap around his neck. Deku then blasting backwards as he does go to bring up his right fist and backhand Aizawa with it. Aizawa being sent flying as Deku actually does go to turn around and look back towards where Shigaraki was. Now, Shigaraki got up off the ground, and you do actually have where they are standing there. And Deku, he's quite surprised to see them. Now, Deku, he actually does see Toga, as she's taken on the appearance of somebody. She is currently disguised as Kendo. However, Deku, he did look down towards her hands, and see that there's no Vengola ring. So, that's your quirk? What are you talking about? It's just me. Oh, come on. You're gonna have to do better than that. However, that does just mean that you're the one who impersonated her. Well, of course I was. Now, Deku does get angry, as he does actually leap forwards and smash Toga right in the gut, talking about how he shouldn't impersonate the dead as he does go to smash her with his left fist. Now, she gets sent flying out of a window, and Deku he does actually go to turn back to try and find everybody else. The entire building, it's chaos, and, well, it's not easy to handle. Mr. Compress has taken out a majority of heroes, captured many of them, and put them into small little balls. Meanwhile, Overhaul and All for One are trying to occupy All Might. The box opens All Might has never seen before, he was not ready for. Along with that, somebody with a strange quirk he doesn't understand, like Overhaul's. Now, this was quite fascinating to him. The guy seems to be able to manipulate Earth, or, well, it appears like the ground. So he just needs to get in close and take him out. Now, you do even have members of the Yakuza Overhaul brought with him. Currently, they're sitting somewhere and waiting. Whenever All Might does stand still, they are to pull the trigger. Now, Deku, yeah. He's still trying to find Shigaraki, since he does need to execute and get revenge. Now, Deku, yeah. Him and his familia do try to take out the rival family. However, there is a bit of a problem. Mr. Compress is holding hostages, and he's threatening to kill everyone, since he does apparently have the Class 1A members on his person. Now, Deku, yeah, whenever he did hear about that, he did want to make that top priority. However, at the same time, he did want to go after Shigaraki. Now, Deku had to make a choice here, and he decided to go after Mr. Compress. Right now, Shigaraki is in no condition to fight. He also has his box weapon. So, that does mean that he's not really getting too far. Now, Deku does fly in, as Kendo she's trying to battle against Mr. Compress and she's trying to stay away. Mr. Compress is moving very slow. However, he is jumping through the air and actually going to toss marbles that are either cars or large portions of rubble at her, meaning that she does have to dodge and weave out of the way of these weapons, or these objects. Now, as Mr. Compress was flying backwards through the air and going to throw out an entire row of marbles, we actually have Deku, who he does come flying in, or at least flying outside, and bring up his hand, as he does do an improved explorer and blast away a lot of the cars that were in front of him, as the blasters fly through the air and smash right into Mr. Compress, who does go flying backwards and smashing into the ground. And many people did see that boy, as they're all wondering who he is. Deku, looking around, is just going to blast forwards and in, before he does directly go to pin down Mr. Compress's arms, as he's going to bring up his leg and smash right into his face. And his mask does come flying off. Now, as it does happen, you actually have Deku where he does go to bring up Mr. Compress's hands and both put them together, before holding them with one of his hands, threatening to burn them off if he does make a wrong move. Now, Mr. Compress saw the seriousness in Deku's face. That wasn't a bluff, that was a threat. Him asking where they are, as Deku does go to reach into his jacket and start pulling out random amounts of marbles, looking at a few of them before going to pocket some and look more and more. Now, with that being said, we'd actually do cut over to the battle with Mr. Overhaul, All for One, and All Might. Now, this battle was quite destructive. In fact, more so than in canon, with All Might or Overhaul and Deku, and then All Might and All for One. My bad. I'm trying to keep track of everything. Anyways, now, this battle, instead of it just blasting away or destroying multiple parts of buildings, it actually does cause massive amounts of damage. Now, this is actually where Overhaul, he does look towards All for One, as All for One does reveal the All Might killing weapon, and he does threaten to kill the students who did come to the rescue. Now, All Might was quite alarmed. Students? As we actually have Deku, who does actually come flying in. Him floating up in the air, as he's going to bring up his hands, holding up 3 marbles. And you do actually have where All for One does look up towards the boy. Now, Deku does look down at All for One. Okay, so this must be him. Now, Deku does just ask if he's All for One, leader of the him then saying the Mafia family name. And All for One does look quite surprised. I haven't heard that name in 100 years. I'm aware. I have valuable information. Really? I should be saying reliable. Interesting. Now, you actually have Overhaul, who he does look up towards Deku. Yeah, this boy's gonna get in their way. So, he's gonna be a bit of a problem. Now, Deku's familiar they're trying to handle the rest of the villains. However, gentle with the help of La Brava, I do want to say he's gone into that bit of love mode or that strength mode. So he's actually trying to do a bit of a challenge for the Familia. Now, I'm aware that La Brava, that she was obsessed with him a bit later, but let's just say that Gentle started early. So as to at least let that line up with a bit of canon. I know some people might talk about that, but I'm just trying to make this all fit. Now, Deku, yeah. As All Might does rush off for one, Deku does look right at Overhaul. As he does go to fly in and go for an attack. Overhaul going to bring up his ring and going to use his block's weapon. As Deku does actually go to bring up his hands and use Shigaraki's. Now, this is where Overhaul was quite surprised watching Deku open Shigaraki's box weapon, as the butterflies do come flying out and directly go to meet with his box animal. Now, this was a giant bee, and it was quite surprising, as the butterflies do fight against the bee, and Deku doesn't go to rush towards Overhaul. Now, Deku, he did at least understand what All Might did say, him shouting to stay away from his hands. Now, Deku, yeah. He did just wonder, a quirk like Shigaraki's? Now, as Overhaul does going to bring his hands down to attack Deku, you actually where Deku does go to actually flip his hand outwards using flames. From behind him, he did go to straighten his wrist, blasting with full power, and then going to bring up his hand or his wrist again and blast backwards at full power. This being where Deku, in the span of 3 seconds, flying directly in Overhaul's hand, he'd actually blast Overhaul with hard flames. And Overhaul did get struck in the chest with quite a bit of damage. Now, we actually do have where All Might, he does look directly at Izuku Midoriya, shouting to the kid to get the hell out of here. Now, All Might shouted that he's going to try and take Deku's quirk, as Deku did turn to All Might, and he did look to see him. All for one going to blast a sound wave attack directly at Deku, as Deku is going to fly directly upwards into the air, and evade it. Now, All Might was quite surprised. That boy is very fast. We actually have Deku, who does go to at least bring his hands out to the side and go to blast to the left, as he does go flying to the right and go to try and circle All for One. Now, Deku's trying to think. This is all kind of bad. They've gotten the students, so they need to retreat. However, right now they're public enemies, or at least going to be seen as vigilantes. So, they've accomplished their task. They should probably leave the rest to heroes, but that's just the problem. Will they all be able to handle it? We've changed the timeline enough to where All Might should have the advantage. So, this being where a gunshot is heard. And Deku actually is going to look to where the sound can be heard, as he does go rushing in and going to smash right through a building as he does go to grab the person who just fired the bullet, slamming them against the wall. And he does see a man in a bird mask. Now, Deku does look at the guy, shouting at him, what did he just do? As Deku, he does go to look around. Nothing seems out of the ordinary down there. Did he just try to fire at All Might? Deku smashing the guy in the gut hard as the guy does fall down, breaking many ribs and puking in his mask. Now, Deku does go to pick up the rifle, as he does go to check to see if the bullet did actually fire. Now, Deku does go to bring the rifle to his eye and look down the sight, as he does see the #1 hero, with a red mark on his outfit as he's beginning to start shrinking down. Now, Deku's eyes do actually widen. No. Now, Deku actually is going to do one thing. If this thing can hurt All Might like that, then it can do the same thing to that villain. Him turning the dot as he's going to go to pull the trigger. Now, Deku, he actually does find that when he does pull the trigger, there is a large or loud click, as Deku is quite confused. Now, Deku is going to bring up his hands to reload the rifle. However, he doesn't find that it's empty. And Deku does just think, shit. Now, Deku does get quite pissed off, as he is going to try and fly in and go to save All Might. Now, All Might, as he is buffing down, he actually does go to see Deku, as he does go to point towards a place for Deku to run, as All For One does go rushing in and smash All Might directly with the weapon as hard as he can. All Might being impaled on the spikes on the glove, or on the hand, as he does go coughing up quite a bit of blood. Now, the moment Deku does see that, he does actually get quite enraged, as he's going to bring up one of his hands and go to throw at the one behind him, as Deku just tried to do a maximum X burner. Deku doesn't know how high his new power reaches, so he's going to at least test it. And if there's a chance that he can kill this guy who just took down All Might, he's going to take it. Now, Deku does go blasting out the X burner, as does go blasting into the air and a loud sound can be heard. Now, Deku's familiar they all did hear this sound, as they've nearly taken down the rest of the villains. And they all do come running outside and many of them do see it. Deku just sent out an X burner that did blast right into All For One. And All For One, he did actually go to bring up his large arm to defend himself. Now, Deku, yeah, he did actually watch as this large power, after All For One did go to defend himself, as it does split, it does start to cut through multiple buildings. Behind All For One, it actually start to blast through them, along with actually causing some of them to collapse. As All For One's arm, half of it did get burned off, and Deku, he did see that, as All For One did go to bring up his hand and go to cock it back. Now, as Deku, he actually is feeling that he does actually start to feel his flames start to fade, as he does actually feel his, hands start to spark out. Now, the moment Deku does actually start to fall onto the ground, or at least start floating downwards, you do actually have the large wolf that does come up and directly go to grab Deku by his arm. And Deku, he does feel that, as the wolf does go to smash onto the ground and land, before turning and running in a direction. Now, Deku, yeah, he was pissed and angry. That bastard just killed All Might. However, right now the villains, they're actually on the retreat. Whatever just happened here today, yeah, it's going to be talked about for a long time. And we do actually have a Vengola safe house, where Deku, he actually does wake up and go to look around. Now, this is all quite bad. Whenever he did wake up, he woke up in an infirmary, getting his injuries looked at, along with even, watching as the news did play on. As the news was talking about how 7 UA students, in recent reports, it has been found that they have connections to the mob, or even the Hasaikai organization, as they do believe. Now, it talks about how these 7 students did break in and attempt to take out the villains, acting as sort of vigilantes and trying to take the law into their own hands. Along with that, the missing students have yet to be found. It is believed that they are still within custody of the villains, and with that being said, there is even the grave loss that has been suffered tonight, since All Might, he was killed in a battle. Now, they start to talk about how a mysterious substance was found in his blood, and they're not exactly too sure what this substance is. Now, Deku, he does hear about that, as you just think about the bullet. Now, this is all kind of bad. And we do actually have our Deku. He does turn to his right and see Reborn, who he's just sitting there sipping an espresso and waiting for Deku to say something. Now, Deku does just turn away and think about what happened today. It happened. The timeline Bakugo talked about played out. This isn't good. Deku, he's pissed himself. He's angry. You did good today. Deku turning his head. What? You did good. Now, that's all Reborn does say. Him going back to silently sipping on his coffee or espresso as Deku does just sit there and try to think about what's going to happen next. Now, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed and have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.